The gunshot echoed through the narrow Itaewon alley like a crack of thunder, and everything after that happened in fragments. Amma felt the impact before she understood what it was. A force that slammed into her shoulder and spun her sideways. Her knees buckled, but her arms stayed locked around the trembling girl pressed against her chest. Yumi's scream pierced the air, shrill and desperate, as Amma's vision blurred at the edges. The pavement rushed up to meet them both, and the last thing Amma saw before everything went dark was the terror in the 15-year-old's eyes. When she opened her eyes again, the world was a cacophony of sirens and shouting voices. Pain radiated from her shoulder in waves that made her stomach turn. Someone was crying, no, sobbing, and it took Amma several confused seconds to realize it was Yumi, still clutching her uninjured arm with both hands. "Amma uni, Jabal, Jabal!" Yumi kept saying, switching between Korean and the broken English they used together, her voice breaking on every syllable. "Please don't leave me. Amma, please, you have to be okay. I'm okay, baby girl." Amma managed in Twi first, the language that came naturally when she was in pain, then switched to English. "I'm okay," though the words came out weak and unconvincing. Her vision swam as paramedics rushed around them, their rapid Korean washing over her in waves she couldn't quite catch. "Miss, please don't move. You've been shot," one paramedic said in careful English, probably noting her brown skin and assuming she wouldn't understand Korean. After 3 years in Seoul, Amma understood more than people expected, but right now she was grateful for any language she could grasp. Shot. The word felt surreal. Amma's mind struggled to catch up with what had happened. They had been walking back from Yumi's hagwon, just like they did every Tuesday and Thursday. The evening air had been cool and pleasant. They'd stopped at the Nigerian restaurant in Itaewon, the one where the owner, Chidi, always greeted Amma with "sister," and gave Yumi extra plantains because he loved seeing a Korean kid who appreciated fufu. Yumi had been complaining about her calculus teacher in that perfectly teenage way, mixing Korean and English in the same sentence, making Amma laugh, and then the black van had pulled up alongside them. Everything after that was instinct, the door sliding open, the men reaching for Yumi, the gun rising. Amma hadn't thought, she had simply moved, pulling Yumi behind her just as the shot fired. 6 years of carrying guilt about Ifua had rewired something in her brain. Never again. She had promised herself, never again. "She's safe." Amma whispered now in Twi, then English, more to herself than anyone else. "That's what matters. Afua is safe." She'd accidentally said Afua's name instead of Yumi's, the pain making everything blur together. The ambulance ride passed in a haze of pain and fluorescent lights. Yumi refused to let go of her hand, even when the paramedics tried to work. Through the fog, Amma could hear someone on the phone, speaking rapidly in Korean. The words "sajangnim" and "tatal" cut through the confusion. "Boss, daughter, oh no, Jiho." Amma's heart rate spiked on the monitor, making one of the paramedics lean over her with concern. Jiho Park was going to lose his mind, the man who had hired her 3 years ago after she'd spent 6 months teaching English in Gangnam. The man whose cold, calculating eyes had seemed to see straight through her during the interview, was about to find out that someone had tried to kidnap his only child. The man who had hesitated before hiring her, not because of her qualifications, but because having a black woman as his daughter's caregiver would raise eyebrows in certain circles. He'd hired her anyway, after Yumi had looked at Amma and said in halting English, "You're so pretty, like the singers on YouTube. Will you teach me about Africa?" The emergency room erupted into organized chaos when they arrived. Nurses and doctors swarmed around Amma's gurney, shouting medical terms she didn't understand. Someone tried to pull Yumi away, but the girl dug in her heels. "Andway, I'm not leaving her," Yumi shouted in Korean, then switched to English for Amma's benefit. "She saved my life. Miss Park Jabal, your father is on his way. Let us take care of her." "I said no," Yumi's voice cracked, and Amma could hear her crying. "She's my family. She's... The girl couldn't seem to find the words in either language for what Amma meant to her. The authority in Yumi's voice, so much like her father's, made the nurses hesitate. Amma tried to smile at her, to tell her it was okay, but the pain medication they'd given her in the ambulance was pulling her under. She caught fragments of the nurse's conversation in Korean. "Is that her mother?" "No, the mother died years ago." "Then who? Maybe a relative?" She doesn't look Korean, obviously, but the last thing she saw before they wheeled her into surgery was Yumi's tear-stained face. And behind her, the emergency room doors flying open. Jiho Park entered like a storm given human form. His black suit was immaculate despite the late hour, but his face was something Amma had never seen before. Raw fear mixed with rage, every carefully controlled mask he usually wore completely shattered. His eyes swept the emergency room in one sharp motion, cataloging every face, every detail, until they landed on his daughter. Yumi ya! The girl turned and ran to him, and Jiho caught her in his arms, holding her so tightly that Amma, even through the medication-induced haze, could see his hands shaking. Behind him, his men filed in, and Amma noticed how the hospital staff's demeanor changed. Everyone in Seoul knew who Jiho Park was, even if they pretended not to. Appa! Yumi sobbed. Amma Uni, they tried to take me and the gun. Are you hurt? Did they touch you? Tell me what happened, Jiho demanded in Korean, his hands checking his daughter for injuries. I'm okay, but Amma... Yumi switched to English, probably because some part of her brain knew Amma needed to know Yumi was explaining what happened. They were trying to take me and she didn't even think. She just pulled me behind her and... Yumi's words dissolved into sobs, and Jiho looked up over her head, his gaze finding Amma on the gurney. Their eyes met for just a moment before the surgical team pushed through the double doors, and Amma saw something in his expression she couldn't quite name. Confusion, disbelief, and underneath it all, a question that would clearly haunt him. Why would this woman, this outsider, this black woman who'd faced whispers and stares and microaggressions since the day she'd started working for his family, throw herself in front of a bullet for his daughter? The surgery took 3 hours. The bullet had lodged in Amma's shoulder, missing major arteries by what the surgeon would later call extraordinary luck in careful English. When she woke up in recovery, the first thing she saw was Yumi asleep in a chair beside her bed, head pillowed on her arms. Someone had brought her a blanket with a traditional Korean pattern. The second thing she saw was Jiho Park standing at the window, his back to her, phone pressed to his ear. He was speaking in low, rapid Korean, the kind he used when he was giving orders that weren't meant to be questioned. I want every CCTV feed from Itaewon. Yes, all of them. I don't care if you have to pay off half the district. I want that van found. I want those men identified within the hour. His voice was quiet, but it carried the kind of cold authority that made Amma's skin prickle. And I want to know who sent them. Check everything. Business rivals, the families from Busan, anyone I've crossed in the last 5 years. He ended the call and stood there for a long moment, his shoulders rigid with tension. Then, without turning around, he spoke in English, careful, formal English that he always used with her. You're awake. Amma's throat was dry. She tried to speak and managed only a rasp. Immediately, Jiho moved, pouring water from a pitcher and bringing it to her. He held the cup while she drank, his movements careful, almost tender. When she finished, he set it aside and finally looked at her directly. The question was there in his eyes before he even asked it. Why? His voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of every emotion he was trying to contain. His English was more accented when he was emotional. Amma had learned. You work for my family 3 years. Good salary, yes, but still just work. So why would you take a bullet for my daughter? Why would you... He stopped, switching to Korean for a moment as if the words were easier there, then back to English. Why risk your life? Amma looked away from his intense gaze, her eyes finding Yumi's sleeping form. The girl's face was still blotchy from crying, her hands stretched across the space between her chair and the hospital bed, as if even in sleep she needed to maintain that connection. In the harsh fluorescent light, Amma could see the friendship bracelet Yumi had made her last month, black, red, and green beads representing the Pan-African flag, woven together with the colors of the Korean flag. Yumi had been so proud when she'd finished it, chattering in her mix of languages about how it represented both of them. I didn't think about it, Amma said finally, her voice hoarse. She unconsciously slipped into Twi for a moment. Me ninwe ne ho, before catching herself and switching back to English. There wasn't time to think. I just moved. That's not answer. Jiho pulled a chair closer to the bed, the legs scraping against the linoleum floor. He sat down heavily, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked exhausted. The carefully maintained facade of the untouchable businessman had cracked, revealing something raw underneath. People don't just throw themselves in front of bullets without reason, especially not for child who isn't theirs, especially not when they know. He stopped himself, jaw clenching. His English was deteriorating, a sign of his stress. When they know what I am, what this family is, when they know how people look at them. That last part hung in the air between them, because they both knew exactly what he meant. Amma had spent 3 years navigating the stares, the whispers, the ajumas who clutched their purses tighter on the subway, the shop owners who followed her around like she might steal something. She'd learned to smile through the "where are you from?" questions that really meant "why are you here?" She'd perfected the art of responding to "you speak Korean so well," with grace instead of exhaustion. And working for the Park family had added another layer. The other caregivers at the Hagwon who'd raised eyebrows when they saw her. The parents who'd asked Jiho, in voices they thought she couldn't understand, if he was sure about hiring that kind of person to watch his daughter. The distant relatives who'd questioned whether Yumi was learning proper Korean or picking up some foreign accent. Amma met his eyes again. "You want to know why? The real reason?" Jiho nodded slowly. "I had a cousin," Amma said softly, the words coming easier in English than they would have in Korean. "Back home in Ghana. Her name was Ifua. She was 12 years old, and she was everything good in the world, you know? Smart, funny, kind. She wanted to be a doctor. She used to practice on her dolls, giving them surgery with her mother's sewing kit." Jiho said nothing, but his attention was absolute. "I was 19 and I was supposed to be watching her one day. We were at Makola Market. It's this big market in Accra. Always so crowded, so loud, so alive. And I got distracted. I was looking at fabric, talking to a vendor about prices, and I didn't notice when she wandered away." Amma's voice cracked, and she had to pause to steady herself. The memory was always there, always sharp, but saying it out loud in this hospital room in Seoul made it feel immediate again. "A drunk driver. By the time I heard the screams and turned around, it was already over. She died before the ambulance even arrived." "That wasn't your fault," Jiho said quietly, his English suddenly more careful, more gentle. "Wasn't it?" Amma's laugh was bitter. "My aunt, Ifua's mother, had trusted me with her only child, and I failed. I've lived with that for 6 years now, Mr. Park. 6 years of knowing that if I had just been paying attention, if I had just been doing my job, Ifua would still be alive. She'd be 18 now, probably in university, studying medicine like she always wanted." She turned to look at Yumi again, and this time tears spilled down her cheeks. "After that, I couldn't stay in Ghana. Everywhere I looked, I saw her. Every girl her age, every child laughing in the street. It was like being haunted. My family tried to tell me it wasn't my fault, but I couldn't forgive myself. So I left, spent some time in Europe, then came to Korea because it was far enough away that maybe I could escape the guilt." "But you didn't escape," Jiho said, understanding dawning in his expression. "No, I just carried it with me. And then I met your daughter." Amma smiled through her tears. "This brilliant, funny, lonely girl who everyone saw as Park Jiho's daughter, never just as Yumi. Do you know what she said to me during that first interview?" Jiho shook his head. "She asked me if Ghana was near Nigeria, because she'd seen a video about Afrobeats and wanted to learn the dances. And then she asked if I could teach her to braid hair like mine, because she thought box braids were the coolest thing she'd ever seen." Amma's voice was soft with the memory. She didn't see my skin color as something strange or foreign. She saw it as beautiful, as something worth learning about. "Yumi has always been curious," Jiho said, a ghost of a smile crossing his face. It was more than curiosity, though. She was hungry for connection, for someone who would see her, really see her, not just as your daughter or as a student or as anything except herself. And I thought, maybe this is my second chance. Maybe I can do right by this girl what I couldn't do for Afua. Amma's hand tightened into a fist, pulling at the IV. "So when I saw those men reaching for her tonight, when I saw that gun, I didn't think about myself. I didn't think about anything except that I would not, could not, let another child die because I failed to act. Not again, never again. Dabi, Dabi. The Twi word for no came out fierce, final. The room fell silent except for the steady beep of the heart monitor and Yumi's soft breathing. Jiho sat very still, his expression unreadable. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion, and he'd abandoned the careful English, speaking in a mix of Korean and English that Amma had learned to follow over the years. I'm sorry for your loss. And I'm sorry that my daughter's safety, that my life, my choices put you in danger. I'm sorry that working for my family means people look at you and judge, that Ajuma's at the market whisper, that other parents at school ask Yumi why her caregiver is different. Don't apologize for other people's ignorance, Amma said, shaking her head. That's not on you. But it is, Jiho insisted, leaning forward. I knew when I hired you that it would be difficult. I knew people would talk. My associates told me to find someone more suitable, more Korean. But Yumi, his voice softened. Yumi looked at you like you hung the moon. And I thought maybe having someone who knows what it's like to be seen as different, to be judged for how you look, maybe that's exactly what she needs. Is that why you hired me? Because I was different? No, I hired you because you were qualified, because you had excellent references, because you made my daughter smile for the first time in months. He paused. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't think about how you might understand parts of her life that I couldn't. What it's like to have people make assumptions about you before you even open your mouth. Amma understood what he meant. Yumi had lost her mother young, and Jiho's lifestyle, the danger, the secrecy, the constant security, meant his daughter lived in a kind of isolation. She was always Park Jiho's daughter first, never just a teenage girl. In a strange way, both Amma and Yumi knew what it was like to be reduced to one defining characteristic, to have people see the surface and never look deeper. The silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the silence of two people who just shared something real, something raw. Then Jiho stood abruptly, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair and leaving it disheveled. You're lying in a hospital bed with a bullet wound because someone came after my child. Because of the life I lead, the enemies I've made, you nearly died. And now, his voice rose, frustration and fear bleeding through. Now you're a target too. They'll know you can identify them. They'll know you protected Yumi. How is any of this acceptable? His voice had risen enough that Yumi stirred in her chair. Both adults froze, watching as the girl's eyes fluttered open. For a moment she looked disoriented, and then her gaze found Amma, and fresh tears welled up. Ani, Yumi whispered, the Korean honorific for older sister coming naturally. She lurched out of her chair to grasp Amma's good hand. You're really okay. I was so scared. I thought when you fell there was so much blood, and I thought I'd lost you too. The word echoed with the weight of Yumi's mother's death, a loss the girl rarely spoke about but always carried. Shh, I'm okay, Amma soothed, squeezing the girl's fingers. I'm right here, baby girl. Metoho, I'm not going anywhere. You saved me. Yumi's voice broke, and she switched to English, maybe because the emotion was too big for any single language. Those men, they were going to take me, and you didn't even hesitate. Like I actually mattered, like I was worth. Hey, Amma said firmly, using her good hand to tilt Yumi's chin up so their eyes met. Listen to me. You don't just matter. You're everything, you hear me? You're smart and creative and strong and so loved. These past 3 years with you, teaching you about Ghana, learning about Korea from you, watching you grow, it's been the greatest gift of my life. But you could have died, and I would make the same choice again in a heartbeat, Amma interrupted. Every single time, I would choose to protect you. Because you're not just my job, Yumi. You're my family, my sister, me nua. The Twi word for my sibling felt right in a way that English couldn't quite capture. Yumi dissolved into sobs, burying her face against Amma's uninjured shoulder. Amma held her as best she could with one arm, making soft, soothing sounds, a mix of Twi lullabies and Korean comfort words she'd learned from Yumi herself. Over Yumi's head, Amma's eyes met Jiho's, and what she saw there made her breath catch. The untouchable Mafia boss was crying. Tears streamed silently down his face as he watched his daughter break down, as he witnessed the bond that had formed between these two people who had become so important to each other. He made no move to wipe the tears away, made no attempt to hide his emotion. He simply stood there, letting himself feel all of it. It took another 20 minutes before Yumi finally calmed down enough to agree to go home and rest. She extracted promises from both Amma and her father that Amma wouldn't disappear, that someone would call her if anything changed, that she could come back first thing in the morning. Jiho personally escorted her out, leaving Amma alone with two guards stationed outside her door and the quiet hum of hospital machinery. But sleep wouldn't come. Every time Amma closed her eyes, she saw the van, the gun, Yumi's terrified face. Her shoulder throbbed despite the pain medication, and the antiseptic smell of the hospital made her nauseous. She was reaching for the call button when the door opened and Jiho slipped back inside. "Can't sleep either?" he asked in English, settling back into the chair beside her bed. "Too much adrenaline, I think," Amma admitted. "And pain medication makes me restless. How's Yumi?" Finally asleep, I had to promise to wake her if anything happened. He rubbed his face tiredly. "She's never been like this before. Even when her mother died, she was so controlled, so contained. But tonight, she broke open completely." "She was terrified," Amma said softly. "Not just of being taken, but of losing me too. Loss like that. It changes you, makes you hold on tighter to the people you have left. Is that what happened to you after Afua?" Amma nodded. "I became hypervigilant. Couldn't stop watching everyone around me, trying to prevent something bad from happening. It's exhausting, living like that, but I couldn't help it. Guilt is a heavy thing to carry." Jiho was quiet for a long moment. Then he said in Korean, perhaps because the words were easier in his native language, "Nae namjadul, igu saramdul earl, chaj as oyo." "My men found them." Amma's Korean was good enough to understand. "The men from the van?" He switched back to English, his accent thicker. "Yes, we have them. And they are talking, telling us who sent them, why they came for Yumi." His jaw clenched. "It's worse than I thought." "How bad?" "Someone in my organization. Someone close. They've been feeding information to a rival group for months about Yumi's schedule, her routes, where she goes, when she's vulnerable." The rage in his voice was carefully controlled, but Amma could feel it radiating off him like heat. "They knew about you too, knew you'd be with her. They thought—" He stopped, switching to Korean briefly before finding the English words again. "They thought because you're foreign, because you're black, that you wouldn't fight, that you'd run, that you'd save yourself instead of my daughter." The words hit Amma like a slap. Of course. Of course they'd made that assumption. In their minds, she was just the help, an outsider with no real connection to the family. Why would she risk her life? "They were wrong," Amma said quietly. "Yes, very wrong." Jiho leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "The man who betrayed us, his name is Young, Minyo. He was my head of security, someone I trusted for 5 years, someone who ate at my table, who I considered a friend." "Why did he do it?" "Money, gambling debts, the usual story." Jiho's voice was bitter. "He owed the wrong people, and they offered him a way out. All he had to do was give them access to my daughter. They wanted leverage over me, wanted to force me to give up territory, connections, resource, and Minho." His voice broke slightly. "Minho sold my child for his own debts." Amma reached out with her good hand, covering his. "What are you going to do?" Jiho looked at their hands, her brown skin against his pale, and something shifted in his expression. "What needs to be done? He will face consequences, and the people who hired him will understand what happens when you come after my family." He looked up at her. "But there's something else, something I need to tell you." The seriousness in his tone made Amma's stomach clench. "What is it?" "The people who came after Yumi, they weren't planning to hurt her. Not physically. They wanted to kidnap her. Yes, but alive, unharmed. Because a dead child has no value as leverage." He paused. "But they would have killed without hesitation. You saw their faces, you can identify them, and you're—" He stopped, searching for words. "Expendable," Amma supplied quietly. "Just the black caregiver, someone whose death wouldn't cause the same outcry as a Korean citizen." Jiho's silence was answer enough. Amma laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I've lived in Korea for 3 years, Mr. Park. I know how this works. I know that if something happened to me, it would barely make the news. Foreign worker involved in incident. Maybe a paragraph on page 6, no photos, No follow-up, just another faceless foreigner in a country that doesn't quite know what to do with people who look like me. That's not, Jiho started, then stopped, because they both knew it was true. That's not acceptable. Not to me. What you did tonight, saving Yumi, it changes everything. You're not just an employee anymore. You're not expendable. You're... He struggled with the words, switching briefly to Korean before finding the English. You're family now, and I protect my family. What does that mean? It means I want you to stay, not as Yumi's caregiver, though she'd never forgive me if you left, but as her guardian, legal guardian, with all the rights and protections that comes with. I want to adopt you into the family register, make it official. Amma stared at him. You want to what? I know it's unusual. I know it will cause talk. My associates will question it. My relatives will be scandalized. He smiled grimly. A black woman added to the Park family register, half of Seoul's old families will have heart attacks. But I don't care. Yumi needs you, and after tonight, after what you did, I owe you a debt I can never repay. The least I can do is make sure you're protected. That, you have status, legal rights, family connections that mean something in this country. Amma's mind was reeling. Family registry in Korea was everything. It determined your legal rights, your social standing, your connections. For Jiho to offer to add her to his family register was unprecedented, scandalous, and incredibly generous. I don't know what to say, she admitted. You don't have to decide now, think about it, but know that the offer stands. Whatever you choose, you'll always have a home here, with us, with your family. Before Amma could respond, Jiho's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression darkened. I need to go, there are matters to handle. But I'm leaving my best people outside your door. You're safe here, I promise. After he left, Amma lay in the darkness, her mind churning. Family registry, legal guardian, the words felt impossible, like something from a dream, but they also felt right in a way that made her chest ache. She must have finally drifted off because the next thing she knew, sunlight was streaming through the windows, and Yumi was there, sitting in the same chair, watching her with red-rimmed eyes. Unnie, Yumi said softly when she noticed Amma was awake, I brought you something. She held up a container, and even before she opened it, Amma could smell it. Jollof rice, perfectly seasoned, with fried plantains on the side. I went to Uncle Chidi's restaurant this morning, Yumi explained in her mix of Korean and English. I told him what happened, and he cried, Unnie. He cried, and then he made this for you himself. He said, her voice wavered. He said you're a hero, that you're what it means to be family. Amma felt tears pricking her eyes. The Taiwan African community had become her lifeline in Seoul, the people who understood what it was like to be othered, to navigate a society that saw you as perpetually foreign. Chidi especially had become like a brother to her. And now he'd made her favorite food, seasoned exactly the way her mother used to make it. Help me sit up, Amma said, and Yumi carefully adjusted the bed. They shared the jollof rice together, Yumi trying it for the first time and making faces at the spice before deciding she loved it. And in that moment, eating food from home with this Korean girl, who'd become her sister, Amma felt something shift inside her. She'd come to Korea running from guilt, trying to escape the pain of Afua's loss. But somewhere along the way, she'd found something she hadn't been looking for, a new family, one that crossed oceans and skin tones and cultures, one built not on blood, but on choice, sacrifice, and love. Yumiya, Amma said softly, using the Korean diminutive. I need to tell you something. The girl looked up, a grain of rice stuck to her cheek. Your father offered to add me to the family register, to make me your legal guardian. And Amma took a breath. I think I want to say yes, if that's okay with you. Yumi's eyes went wide. Then, without warning, she burst into tears and threw her arms around Amma, careful of her injured shoulder. Yes! 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 She sobbed in Korean, then English, then a mix of both. I want that so much. I want you to be my real Unnie, not just someone Dad pays. I want you to be my family forever. Okay then, Amma said, holding her close and crying too. Forever it is, Minua. Forever. 5 days later, Amma was discharged from the hospital. Her shoulder was still in a sling and would be for weeks, but the doctors were amazed at how well she was healing. Jiho had arranged for a private car to take her home, not to her small apartment in Hongdae that she'd been renting for 3 years, but to the Park family residence in Seongbuk-dong. Your things have already been moved, Jiho had said matter-of-factly when she'd protested. Your family now, family lives together, especially when there are still threats to manage. The threats had been dealt with swiftly and, Amma suspected, violently. Jung Minho had disappeared. Jiho wouldn't tell her exactly what had happened, and Amma wasn't sure she wanted to know. The rival organization had received a message they apparently understood, because word on the street was that the Park family was now untouchable. No one would dare come after Yumi again. As the car pulled up to the house, Amma saw what looked like half of Itaewon's African community gathered outside. Chidi was there, along with his wife Amara. There was Brother Samuel from the Ghanaian church she sometimes attended, Sister Grace who sold African fabrics at the market, and at least a dozen others. They burst into cheers when she stepped out of the car, and suddenly she was surrounded by familiar faces, people speaking Twi and Yoruba and Igbo and English all at once. Our sister! Our hero! Chidi boomed, pulling her into a careful hug that minded her shoulder. You showed them. You showed all of them what we're made of. The whole community is talking about you, Amara said, her eyes shining with pride. How you protected that girl like she was your own. How you didn't run, didn't hesitate. You made us all proud, Amma. Yumi stood on the steps of the house, watching with wide eyes as this community embraced Amma. When the crowd finally parted, the girl ran down and threw herself at Amma. They all came to welcome you home, Yumi said in wonder. Uncle Chidi called everybody, and look. She gestured to a table that had been set up laden with food. They brought a feast. There's jollof and fufu and plantains, and, Unnie, there's so much food. It's how we celebrate, Brother Samuel explained in his rumbling voice. One of our own has done something worthy of honor. This is how we show respect. Jiho appeared at the door, and Amma noticed how he stood there for a moment, taking in the scene. His daughter laughing with members of the African community, his home filled with the sounds of languages he didn't speak, the smells of foods he'd never tried, and Amma, the woman who'd saved his child's life, surrounded by her people. He walked down the steps and approached Chidi, extending his hand. Thank you for coming, and thank you for taking care of Amma all this time, for making her feel less alone in our city. Chidi's eyebrows rose in surprise, but he shook Jiho's hand firmly. She's our sister. That's what family does. Yes, Jiho said, his accented English careful, but sincere. That's exactly what family does. Please, all of you, come inside, share food with us. Let us celebrate together. What followed was one of the most surreal afternoons of Amma's life. Jiho's formal Korean house filled with the sounds of African celebration. Yumi running around with a plate of jollof, excitedly trying to learn Twi phrases from Brother Samuel, Chidi teaching Jiho how to properly eat fufu with soup, Amara braiding Yumi's hair in cornrows while singing Yoruba songs. And through it all, Amma sat in the middle of it, her heart full to bursting. Two worlds that should have remained separate were colliding, mixing, creating something entirely new. Later, as the sun began to set and guests started to leave, Chidi pulled Amma aside. You're really staying here? He asked in Twi. With them? Yes, Sten, Amma said. They're my family now, too. And your apartment, your old life? I needed to let that go anyway. I've been holding on to it like a safety net, you know? Always ready to run if things got too hard. But I'm tired of running, Chidi. Tired of being afraid to put down roots. He studied her face. You look different. Lighter, somehow. I feel different. For the first time since Afua died, I feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be, like I'm doing what I was meant to do. Chidi pulled her into another hug. Then I'm happy for you, sister. But remember, the community is still here, always. You don't stop being one of us just because you're joining a Korean family. I know, Amma said, squeezing him back. I'm not choosing one over the other. I'm just expanding my definition of family. After everyone left and Yumi was finally in bed, exhausted from the excitement, Jiho found Amma on the veranda. She was looking out at the garden, her mind still processing everything that had happened. Your shoulder, is it hurting? He asked, settling into the chair beside her. A little, but it's manageable. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Jiho said, I went to the immigration office today, started the paperwork for your residency status. No more E2 visa renewals, no more worrying about sponsors or contracts. When the family registry is updated, you'll have permanent residency. Eventually, if you want, citizenship. Amma turned to look at him. You're really doing this, actually adding me to your family. I don't make promises I don't keep, especially not ones this important. He paused. My mother called today. She heard about the shooting, about you, about my plans. And? She's furious, of course. Says I'm bringing shame on the family name, that people will talk, that adding a foreign woman, a black woman, to our registry is unconscionable. He smiled slightly. I told her that Yumi's safety and happiness matter more to me than her social standing. That you are family now, regardless of what she thinks. We did not part on good terms. Jiho, I don't want to come between you and your mother. You're not. She is. By choosing prejudice over her granddaughter's well-being. He looked at Amma directly. My associates questioned my decision too, some of them quite boldly. I made it clear that anyone who has a problem with you being part of this family is welcome to leave my employment. Several did. I'm causing you to lose business relationships. No, their own narrow-mindedness is causing that. And honestly, I'd rather work with people who see capability and loyalty, not just skin color. He leaned back in his chair. Besides, your bravery has earned respect in certain circles. Word spread about what you did. A woman who would take a bullet for a child, that's the kind of loyalty everyone in my world values. Some of my rivals have actually reached out to express admiration. Amma shook her head in disbelief. This is so surreal. Welcome to my life. He smiled, then grew serious again. There's something else. The paperwork. It requires a Korean name. For the registry. You can keep Amma as your given name, but you'll need to choose a family name to be officially recorded. Park, Amma said immediately. If I'm joining your family, I'll take your name. Something shifted in Jiho's expression. Surprise, maybe, or gratitude. You're sure? You could choose any name. Start fresh. I'm sure. Park Amma. She tested the way it sounded in Korean. It feels right. Then Park Amma it is. Welcome to the family, officially. 3 months later, the paperwork was finalized. Amma stood in the government office, holding a document that declared her Park Amma, legal guardian of Park Yumi, member of the Park family registry. Her hands trembled as she read her name in Hangul, this new identity that somehow felt both foreign and absolutely right. Yumi bounced beside her, unable to contain her excitement. Can we go now? Everyone's waiting. Everyone turned out to be another fusion celebration, this time at the house, with both Korean and African dishes laid out, decorations in both Ghanaian and Korean styles. Brother Samuel had insisted on performing a traditional naming ceremony, even though Amma technically already had her name. Your Korean name, yes, he'd said. But in our tradition, you're also taking on a new role. That deserves recognition. So Amma sat in the center of the living room while Brother Samuel poured libations and spoke prayers in Twi, asking the ancestors to bless this new chapter of her life. And then Jiho, in halting but earnest English, made his own speech about family, loyalty, and the bonds that transcend blood. In Korea, we say blood is thicker than water, Jiho said. But I am learning, that there are many kinds of family. The one you're born into, yes, but also the one you choose, the one you build through sacrifice and love and commitment. Amma chose to protect my daughter when she could have run. She chose to stay when she could have left. She chose us, and we, Yumi and I, we choose her too, forever. Yumi stood up holding something in her hands. Unnie, I made you something. It was a hanbok, but unlike any Amma had ever seen. The traditional Korean garment had been made with kente cloth accents, the bright patterns of Ghana woven into the Korean design. The jeogori was traditional silk, but the chima had strips of kente running through it like rivers of color. I had it commissioned, Yumi said shyly. I wanted something that was both of us, both of who we are together. Do you like it? Amma couldn't speak. She just nodded, tears streaming down her face as she pulled Yumi into a tight embrace. Later, wearing her fusion hanbok, Amma stood for photos with her new family. Yumi on one side, Jiho on the other, and surrounding them, a mix of Korean and African friends, all celebrating this impossible, beautiful thing they'd created together. Her phone buzzed with a message from her mother in Ghana. Your aunt called me. She heard what you did. She says Ifua would be proud. She says you honored her memory in the best way possible. And she forgives you, my daughter. It's time you forgave yourself too. Amma read the message 3 times, each word settling into the places where guilt had lived for so long. Maybe her mother was right. Maybe saving Yumi hadn't been about redemption at all. Maybe it had simply been about love, the kind that doesn't calculate risk or worry about consequences, but just acts because that's what family does. Annie, come on, we're cutting the cake, Yumi called out, pulling at her hand. Coming, Minua, Amma called back, slipping her phone into her pocket. As she walked toward the celebration, toward this family she'd found in the most unexpected place, Amma thought about all the versions of herself she'd been. The girl who'd lost her cousin. The woman who'd fled halfway around the world to escape her guilt. The English teacher trying to make ends meet in a foreign country. The caregiver who'd seen a lonely girl and recognized a kindred spirit. And now, Park Amma. Sister, guardian, family, not Korean, not entirely. Not just Ghanaian anymore either, but something new, something hybrid, something uniquely hers. An Afro-Korean story written in 3 languages, flavored with jollof and kimchi, celebrated with both ancestral prayers and formal bows. She'd taken a bullet and found a family. She'd lost one sister and gained another. She'd crossed oceans and found home in the most unlikely place. And as Yumi pulled her into the circle of laughing, celebrating people, some Korean, some African, all family, Amma finally understood what her aunt had meant all those years ago when she said, "Home isn't a place, dear child. It's the people who see you and love you anyway." She was home. Finally, impossibly, completely home. And that, Amma thought as Yumi smashed cake into her face, while Jiho tried unsuccessfully to maintain his dignity, and Chidi led everyone, in a Ghanaian celebration song, was worth every scar, every tear, every mile she traveled to get here. This was her story. Afro-Korean, beautiful, and entirely her own. If you believe in family built on choice, subscribe now and never miss the next chapter of Amma's journey.